All right, guys, well, we're going to go ahead and get started, and if we've got some more that show up as we go on, that's cool. But I'm going to open up with prayer tonight, so let's pray. God, thank you for today. Thank you for your blessings that you've given us today. We thank you for the beautiful sunshine, the weather as it warms up. Thank you for physical life that you give to us, the ability that we have to be here, and the health that you give to us each and every day. Thank you for salvation. Thank you for your son, Jesus, and that we have hope and that we have a future. And I just pray that you would be with us as we finish out this class, that you would teach us some things tonight that would be beneficial to us, that we could live out every single day in our families, in our workplaces, wherever we're at, God. May we be able to share blessings with others. We'll give you honor and glory and praise, God, for all you're going to do tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So I would love to, as we get started tonight, I don't know if anybody has an example of how you have actually been able to live this out. Maybe some of you have taken some steps to try to bless somebody in your life, and maybe you've experienced the fruit of doing that. I know some of you have talked to me about even some things you've done in your family over the years with this idea in mind, just kind of as an idea to give to others who are here this evening. Just any sort of fruit of the blessing that you've experienced or examples that you would like to share. If you have them, I'd love you to come up here. I've got a microphone just so you could share with the rest of the group. But before we get started tonight, I wanted you guys to be able to do that. So does anybody just have an example of something that they've done or how you've experienced the fruit of doing this, either recently or in your family past? This is your chance to be the star of the show. Some of you guys were thinking you would share, but you don't want to come up front and make me put you on microphone. So it can be an encouragement to share with other people, though. Anybody have an example? All right, come on up. I know, it's all right. This is going to benefit those who watch online later on as well, because there are a number of people who can't be here tonight, so they're going to get to hear some of these stories. So
makes me more embarrassed.
Yeah.
Mine's really simple.
You're good.
Is it on? Okay. I'm Sarah, and I have a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and 2-year-old. So I think it was the second week you had us write cards, or maybe it was the first week. So I went home and just wrote out something for my kids. I have done that for them to have like on their 16th birthday, but nothing like for them to have now. And they're so young, so I thought, is it going to do anything? So the next day I brought each kid into the room and sat in the rocking chair and had them sit on my lap, and I read them the note twice, and then I gave it to them, gave them a hug, and then had them leave and had the next one come in. So the very next day, my 3-year-old said, "Mommy, I'm going to make you a snowflake letter, and it is going to say," and she regurgitated what I was saying about her to me, and I thought, I only said that twice. And this is my 3-year-old who the very next day was like, "Mommy, I'm making you a snowflake card, and it's going to say da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da." So she had already internalized the simple things that I wrote to her. So, and then the next day, my 5-year-old said, "Mommy, when is your next class?" And I said, "It's not till Tuesday." And he said, "Well, what are you doing then?" And I said, "I don't know yet. I don't know what the homework is." Well, he said, "Well, just let me know when you do it."
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, just the idea that a 3-year-old actually was blessed and wanted to do that herself. And for your other son to say, or other child, "When's the next class?" That was really cool. Hopefully you'll do that again. So that's the power of a blessing. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else? It's a good example. We good? Okay. Well, if you guys feel compelled as the night goes on, make sure you let me know, and I'll make sure that I give you guys another opportunity. All right, so as you see, I have a whiteboard up here, so I'm going to attempt to draw tonight, which will be fun in and of itself, because I really struggle to even draw stick people, which is about all I'm going to do tonight is a stick man. But we're going to talk a little bit tonight about some barriers to blessing others. I know that I've talked to you guys before that all of us, when we look back in our past, some of us grew up in a very nurturing home where, from the time you guys were little, your parents were speaking blessings like Sarah. They were reading to you, they were praying over you, they were helping you to, when you were afraid, not be afraid anymore. They would lay down, they'd fall asleep with you. Honey, there's nothing to fear. Daddy's never going to leave you. Mommy's always with you. You've had those things said to you. And there's others of us who, and we can even go back generations, where there were certain ways that things were done, and to operate in a way differently than the way that you had been brought up was really, really hard to do. Just for example, some of you had parents that the idea was the father went to work, and the father worked for the family, and the father brought home money for the family and provided for the family, but it was almost like a weird thing if a dad ever invested emotionally with the kids, right? Some of you had parents like that, where it was like, dad's going to be at home, dad's going to work, dad'll work long hours, and he's going to give you everything you need, but the emotional nurturing happened from mom. And so it's really difficult sometimes to break that just way of life if, my dad did this, his dad did that, and now I'm trying to do it differently. Like I'm trying to operate in a way where maybe it's okay for the father to emotionally invest in his children, like to actually speak blessings into their kids. So some of us are trying to overcome patterns that we've faced our entire life. So it's not easy to share the blessings sometimes, especially if you have hurt or pain in your own life. So we're going to just talk a little bit about that. And here's a saying that I use quite often in the counseling that I do with people I sit down with. We always have to remember that hurt people hurt people. I just think it's a reality that many of us, when we experience hurt and when we experience pain, sometimes we don't know how to process that. We don't know how to deal with that. So we just find ourselves hurting the people that are close to us, not because we want to. It's just we're experiencing hurt, we're experiencing pain, and we don't know what to do with it. So we end up hurting people when we don't even intend to hurt people. So sometimes that happens, and nobody comes from a perfect background. Does anybody come from a perfect background? I mean, I put nobody. I don't think that's probably possible. But if you don't deal with the things that you're dealing with in your past, what you end up doing is, I'm going to call it image management. So you're just have an image that you're trying to portray that everything's all right and everything's perfect because you don't know how to deal with it. So you put a smile on your face, you act like everything's okay, you don't let anybody in, and over time it starts to kill you from the inside. So we're just going to talk a little bit about some barriers to blessing others tonight. And the first thing that I want us to understand is to get beneath the surface of someone, to get beneath the deeper things that people might be going through, you're going to actually have to do it in your own life. So you're going to have to actually process some hurt and pain and some things from your past so that you can actually bless others. Because there are a lot of people that they've just never dealt with things underneath the surface, and so they're struggling, they're feeling a lot of pain, and they're just internalizing, and it stops them from being able to truly love and care about the people that are in our lives. So it's a little bit like, if you've seen this picture before, the iceberg principle, this is what it's like. So if you've seen the movie Titanic, you know that sometimes what's underneath the surface can do way more damage than what's above the surface. So really about 10% of you is what people see. Okay? About 10% of you is what you show to other people, and what people don't see is the underneath the surface stuff. Like, they may see your behavior and how you're acting, good or bad, and the smile on your face or the sadness on your face, but that's only 10% of the story, because the bigger story is what's going on. What is your past? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What are you going through every single day? People don't know what's underneath the surface sometimes. And we have to deal with what's underneath the surface if we really want to bear fruit in our lives. You have to deal with what's below the surface. So a lot of times what happens is we put up a facade, right? When we're not dealing properly with what's underneath the surface, we have to put on a facade. Like, who do I need to be to make it in life? How do I need to act to allow people to stay close enough to me? We have our public self. Like right now, this is my public self, okay? If you wanted to know about my private self, then I could ask Michelle to come up here and tell you what I'm like away from a class that I'm teaching. Because we have a private self that not a lot of other people know about, maybe only a few people. But the public self is often a little bit different than our private self, okay? So what I'm going to do, this is where I'm going to kind of show you a picture of how this works. And like I said, I'm not a very good artist. But what happens is, let's just say this is you. This is your stick person, okay? And this is kind of like the core of our being. This is our heart. This is, when we think through all the things that have happened in our life, those things start to take root in the core of our being. Our experiences, our hurt, our pain, our burdens, all those sorts of things. And what happens is sometimes we don't know how to process those things. We don't know how to deal with those things. So what we'll sometimes do is we just disassociate ourselves from our hurt, from our pain, from our feelings. I don't know how to deal with this, and I don't want to think about what I'm going through, and I don't want to think about the hurt and the pain from my childhood or the abuse or all those sorts of things that have happened. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to kind of disassociate myself from my feelings, and I'm going to put on this facade. And this is the public image that I have to portray to everybody because I don't want people to know the deeper stuff, right? So what you have here is you might have like your family is out here, your friends are out here, parents, it might be your parents are out here. But more than anything, all of these people are kind of kept at a distance. Because we're just not dealing with the hurt and pain. And more than anything, there's someone else that when we put up this facade and we don't deal with our hurt and we don't deal with our pain, there's somebody else that's kind of outside of here as well. It's Christ. And so when we are dealing with hurt and we are dealing with pain and we're putting up this facade, we usually don't let anybody in. And there's a lot of people that years after they've gone through the hurt, years after they've gone through the pain, they're still putting on this public image that I'm all right, and inside, they're falling apart. So if someone lives behind a facade and seeks identity within their flesh, they're not truly living life. So we have to be authentic, and if we don't move past the facade, how are you going to bless people when you're internalizing everything? When you're in your own little world, when you're dealing with all your pain, it's going to be hard for you to go out and bless other people and encourage other people. So we've got to figure out this facade thing. So in your book, you're going to see what causes people to put up a facade. What are the types of things that cause people to put up a facade or to wear a mask? We all do this. We all put a mask on and portray to be someone sometimes that we're not. Well, the first thing that will cause us to put up a facade is our burdens. These are the things in our life that take our attention away from what we need to be doing. And it can, as it says in here, we can lose decades by being controlled of our burdens. So our burdens are just anything that robs us of peace and rest. So I'm going to put inside our little facade, I'm going to put my burden circle. And you're not going to be able to read this. So inside of our private world, we're dealing with burdens. We're dealing with hurt. We're dealing with pain. So some of these things could be aging. Like I'm getting older, and I'm frustrated by that, and things are falling apart, and I'm trying to, like me, I do this on the softball field, okay? So I play church softball, and I still play in the A League, and I've been doing this for about 10 years. 10 years ago, when I was playing in the A League, everything was going very, very well. I wasn't pulling muscles. I was diving in the outfield, catching balls. I was probably scaring my family even back then, but I would get up off the ground and everything was great. Well, now, even last night, I'm playing church softball and I'm out in the outfield and I go to take off and I pull my gluteus muscle, like my butt muscle. And it was extremely painful and it was even hard to get around the bases. And I'm learning that I am not the same person that I used to be 15 years ago. I've already quit playing basketball because I sprained my ankle too many times, and I'm like, it's not worth it. And so we all have these things that we're wearing, and nobody might know about those things. You're just lucky that I get to tell you some of those things that I think through. But aging might be a burden that we carry, or marriage struggles, marriage issues. Nobody has to know about your marriage struggles and marriage issues if you don't let them, right? I mean, you can all come to church on a Sunday. You've had a terrible week. Your husband is annoying you like crazy. Your wife's annoying you like crazy. You're dealing with some really big stuff, but we walk into church on Sunday. Hi, how are you? Great, everything's perfect, right? And we put on the facade, and then we go away, and we're still dealing with our own private world, and nobody knows. Or our kids' behavior. Like some of you guys have kids that are from like the pit of hell, right? It feels like they never behave. They are a constant struggle. You don't know how to control them. You're a Christian parent and your kids aren't acting like Christian kids, but you don't want anybody to know that, right? And so you hope your kids come into church and they go into the nursery and they don't cause any problems, and everyone will tell you, your kid is like perfect. And you're like, okay. Like, thanks, I don't know that kid. Are you sure you have the right kid? But seriously, our kids' behavior can be something that's a burden for us. Or our business might be struggling. Like things might be going bad at work, or our health is failing. No one needs to know if your health is failing. All of us can put on a facade, right? Or people pleasing. Anybody ever done this? Like where you're trying to please everybody, and you find that the more people you try to please, you end up pleasing no one. And it's a burden that you bear. Like, I'm trying to make people happy, and mom is never happy. Dad is never happy. Sister's never happy. Brother's never happy. My employer is never happy with me. And I'm spending my whole life trying to make people happy. Or rules, following rules, right? You guys know the scripture where Jesus talked to, and we'll talk about it a little bit, where Jesus, let's go to that scripture. Matthew 11. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." So what I'm showing you is when you are dealing with these burdens that nobody knows about, again, we'll keep our friends at a distance, our family at a distance, our parents. We don't let anybody know this is going on. We think God doesn't know what's going on, and so we're just keeping him outside. So this facade that we're keeping ourselves within is destroying us, and we have to understand God's just saying, you know what? I want to give you rest. I want to actually carry your burden for you, right? And he talks about a yoke. And he says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Like, come to me and you will find rest. Do any of you need rest? Like true, real rest. You know, in the Bible where it talks about my yoke is easy and my burden is light, you know what that actually was referring to? It was referring to kind of all the rules and the laws of the Pharisees that they would place on people. In addition to all the Old Testament laws, the Pharisees would add hundreds of laws in addition to that. And you could never do it right. You could never make God happy, people happy. You just felt like you were failing all the time. And following the rules and trying to do the right thing all the time, it can be burdensome. And so Christ is like, you know what? Come to me, like yoke yourself with me. Get in relationship with me. That's why there's two little things. I mean, a yoke, when you see cows, they're both in the yoke together. They actually do really well when they're working together. I mean, what better person to have in the yoke with you than the Savior of the world, than Jesus Christ, of yoking yourself to him and letting him carry your burden. But if you're putting on a facade and you're internalizing everything, you're not going to get blessing from anyone, and you're not going to bless anyone else. Does that make sense? So burdens are the first thing. The second thing that you'll find inside here, I'm going to use a different color just for the fun of it. This is ungodly behaviors. Ungodly behaviors. All right? Ungodly behaviors. These are things in our life that we know the Lord isn't excited about and that maybe we feel shame over. But we don't tell anyone about it, because if someone finds out, they would actually think less of us, as if they're not sinners themselves. But we have these behaviors or things in our life that we're hiding from others, and it's preventing us from engaging people properly. I'm going to tell you I deal with this all the time in counseling, okay? So you'll have a couple that will come in, and you find out that one of them might have an addictive behavior, right? They've been struggling with for years. It might be alcohol. and they can't overcome it. They can't control it. They're trying to deal with it on their own. They don't want anybody to know. Certainly don't want pastor or the church to know. They don't want any of their other family members to know. We got to keep this quiet. We got to deal with this addiction on our own. And what happens is they start realizing that this is destroying our marriage because this addiction is taking the place of me, and you're consumed with it, and you're giving all your attention to this and not to me, and it's affecting our relationship, but nobody knows about it. Or a porn addiction, pornography. Like, there are some husbands and wives who are trying to work through a porn addiction on their own, and it's impossible because it's affecting the other so much, and that is not the person who needs to be helping you with that. You've got to let some other people in, pastor, family, friends. Someone needs to know so that you can come alongside that person and help to overcome it. I mean, how do emotional affairs happen? It's secretive. It's no one has to know about this, right? We'll just keep it between us. And my family doesn't have to know. My wife doesn't need to know. My friends don't need to know. My parents don't need to know. Jesus doesn't need to know. We're just going to kind of do this behavior. And it actually keeps us from blessing others. Have you ever tried to be a blessing to your wife when you're having an emotional affair with someone? Or when you have a porn addiction? Like, we have to deal with ungodly behaviors if we're truly going to bless other people. And we have to let God help us, right? Because you can't change an ungodly behavior on your own. Have anyone ever tried to fix a sin on your own? It doesn't work. We need the Lord's help in order to be able to do that. And 1 John tells us, 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and he's just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So we don't have to hide our sin from God or anyone else. All we need to do is say, God, I need you. Like, I'm struggling in this area, and I need to bring this to the Lord. And it says if we do, he's going to forgive you every single time and cleanse you from all unrighteousness, all right? It also says in Psalm 103 that as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed your transgressions from you. So it's just a matter of, letting God in, letting people come in to help us through this. Like, you can overcome ungodly behaviors primarily with the help of God and his forgiveness, and you can be made right with the people that you need to be made right with. In Hebrews 8, I will forgive their wrongdoing, and I will never again remember their sins. I mean, isn't that cool? So the God that you follow that is omniscient, you know what that word means? He's all-knowing. He knows everything. There's nothing that God doesn't know. You're not going to ever surprise him. You're never going to hide anything from him. He knows everything about you, but it says he'll never again remember, which means he chooses to not remember your sin, because he could remember it, but as soon as you forgive and he removes your sin as far as the east is from the west, he doesn't remember your sin anymore. Don't you wish you could do that? Don't you wish you could forget about the sins and things that people have done to you? We're human, we can't. God doesn't remember those things. He sets you in a good place again. So don't try to deal with burdens and ungodly behaviors on your own. You're going to have to drop the facade so that you can do what you need to do and actually bless people and let people bless you. The final one that I would say causes people to put on facades is our past. Our past. What things have been done to us or have influenced our identity. You have to process those things that have happened in the past, because here's the idea. If you don't deal with your past, it will affect your present, which will affect your future. If you don't deal with your past, it's going to affect your present. You all know this, which will then affect your future. So we need to let the Lord dictate how we relate to others and how we feel about ourselves. And if you don't deal with your past problems, you're going to live behind a facade. So angry words that have been spoken to you, that have hurt you and harmed you and destroyed you as a person, at some point you're going to have to deal with that with the Lord to allow you, release you of the pain of those angry words that were said to you 10 years ago, 20 years, 30 years ago. Or bullying. Did anybody deal with bullying when you were younger? At all? Anybody in here? I don't know if you have, but many people do. And it's a pain that they'll carry for many, many years of their life, of just bullying and not being the strong one or the powerful one. It's an overwhelming thing for some kids to have to deal with. Or abuse. Some of us have dealt with abuse in our past. I told you my mother dealt with abuse in her past. If you don't deal with the past, it's going to affect your present and it'll affect your future. Or trying to make everybody happy, and never doing enough to make your pastor happy, your wife happy, your husband happy, whoever it is that you're trying to please. It just becomes tiring to try to win the approval of people that it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to gain their approval. So we have to deal with, I didn't do my past circle, but we have to deal with the past. So dealing with your burdens, dealing with your ungodly behavior, and dealing with your past. The Bible says in Jeremiah 29:11, we read this last week, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope, and plans to give you a future. Doesn't that sound a lot like God wants to help us to remove the past to be able to have a future? He wants you to deal with that so that we can prosper and give a hope and a future. And I like this verse in Deuteronomy 23, verse 5, when Balaam was actually hired to try to curse the people. And it says, the Lord your God wouldn't listen to Balaam. When he tried to curse the Israelites, the Lord our God would not listen to Balaam, but he turned the curse into a blessing for you because the Lord your God loves you. I love this idea of the Lord can turn our curses in our past into a blessing when we find healing and we can actually help other people. So what do you got to do? If you're going to actually get to the point where you can bless people and receive blessing, you're going to need to do this. You're going to need to get rid of the facade and then just see what this picture does when we get rid of that facade. These friends, these family, these parents, God, all of these people around us can come alongside us and they can help to carry our burdens and they can help us to deal with some ungodly behaviors that have gotten the best of us and they can help us deal with our past. That's what counselors, pastors, therapists, family, friends, the Lord, all of those people, when you let those people in and you don't live beneath the surface anymore, but you live outside and you're real, then you can walk in freedom. And it's a beautiful thing. And some of you guys have experienced this. And some of you maybe have to let down the facade because you've been trying so hard to hide things and deal with them on your own. And you need to let people in to carry that with you. I've seen personally the damage that's done when you don't do that. If you turn to the next page, page 13 in your manuals, I'm not going to have you guys share, but maybe you'll want to take stock of this. What kind of families withhold the blessing? Which, if any, did you come from? And how did that experience affect your ability to receive the blessing and to bless others? So maybe some of you came from one of these homes, the home with favoritism, where there was always the favorite child. And maybe you were the favorite child, and maybe you weren't the favorite child. But you grew up in a home where you kind of knew somebody here is the favorite. Maybe because they were good behavior and followed all the rules, like Jacob and Joseph, right? It's not good to be a part of a home with favoritism, but some of us were part of a home where that was the case, and we're going to have to work through that so that we can bless others. What about the home with over-control, where you can't do anything because something bad might happen? Any of you had that where your parents were like, I'm not going to let you do anything because if you go out and drive a car, you might crash and die. So you just need to stay at home. Like no new experiences, a lot of control, because if we can just control everything in their world, not let them go on mission trips, not let them go with friends to parties, not let them do, if I can just keep them in our home and they never have to, then they're never going to get hurt or they're never going to be harmed. Problem is, they're never going to have any relationships or friends either, but some of us grew up with a home of over-control. What about the home that keeps the blessing just out of reach, where you can't ever do enough to please? Like you think you're going to do this, like something really awesome, and dad's going to say he's proud of you, and he doesn't tell you he's proud of you, so you have to do something. It's like you're constantly seeking that blessing from a parent, and it's always just out of reach. Like maybe I've made him happy. Maybe I've made him proud. Maybe the grades were high enough. Maybe my GPA got to a 4.8 on a 4-point scale, and there's just a little bit more that I need to do to make them happy. Some of us have had to deal with that. The home with the punishing personality, right? I see this a lot. The militant parenting, right? Where it's a lot of rules, a lot of discipline. You know, I'm going to beat them into submission until they actually follow the rules. You get in line. Get in line, follow the rules. Or some of these homes, in the militant homes, they'll give you the silent treatment too. They'll give you the aggressive stuff, or they'll go passive-aggressive on you. But it's just, you feel like you're always in trouble. No matter what you do, you can't make people happy. Or the home that exchanges blessing for a burden. So there's abuse in the home. Or there's always strings attached. Some of us have had to grow up in homes where you don't do this, if you do this, then this. And if you don't do this, then this. It's always strings attached. Or this is one, the home with emotional minefields, where there's explosions of anger, where it's an unpredictable environment. You don't know what you're going to get one day to the next, right? Every day's different. You know the types of home where this happens the most? Alcoholic homes, where it's just like, some days everything's great. Some days I come home and it's like all hell broke loose because there's addiction there. Or there's alcoholism, and the person that you love is totally different when they're under the influence than when they're not under the influence. And I say this because I know that some of you came from these homes, but some of us might be operating homes like this, and we're going to need to address some of these things if we want to give the blessing. All right, the home with unyielding family traditions. So some homes, it's like this happens in ministry homes where like a kid grows up and they kind of know they're going to need to be a pastor because there's 3 generations of pastors in the family. So you don't want to be the kid that breaks that tradition of always having a pastor in the family. And that can feel really overwhelming. Or some of you, this can happen in like homes where there's a family business and kids are like well, who's going to take over the family business if I'm the only kid left and no one's taking it over? Like, I've got to carry this family business, and it can be a huge burden. And nobody even knows that you don't feel called to it, or you felt like God's called you to another purpose, but you just know the family tradition is that this is an 8th generation family business, and if I don't do it, who's going to do it? So there's some unyielding family traditions, and if we don't take it, we lose acceptance. Or what about the home with secrets, where you can't be real? They're like, be honest with me. You know, son, be honest with me. Well, I would really like to be honest with you, but I know it's going to be held against me, right? Or you ask your husband or wife to be honest with you and be real with you, but as soon as you're honest and real, it's held against you. There's secrets. You can't be real. You can't be honest. Like, remember what we talked about? I mean, in order to find healing, you need to probably be these things. You need to be real, you need to be honest, and you need to be authentic to walk in freedom. And some of us can't be that with the people that we're closest to. We have to avoid certain people or not let people know because I can't be real, honest, and authentic with my mom or with my dad. So we got to put boundaries in place with those people, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And then finally, the home that offers only part of the blessing. Maybe you didn't get the entire blessing because there was divorce in your family. And so it's a split home, and so you wanted your dad's blessing, but like my mom, her dad moved to Florida and lived apart, and so she got to see him once a year. So it was hard for her to receive the blessing because of the divorce. Or some people, it's death. Like we've talked about this, like some of us wanted to get a blessing from someone and they're not even around anymore. And so we missed the blessing because that person passed away. Or desertion. Like some people, they were deserted. They were given up. And so they weren't able to receive the blessing. So I don't know what sorts of homes you've all come from or homes that you may be operating, but these are the types of families that will withhold the blessing. And we're talking in this class, the blessing is really important. You heard from Sarah, just a simple blessing over our kids, how much that means to them. It's important that we find a way to do that. And if we don't do that, then there's some effects of missing the blessing. So I'm just going to, in your manual, I'd like to read these because I think it's important for us to understand some of these things. Typically, people who grew up in a home where these abundance happened, you have to find a way to cope. You have to find a way to deal with it. And you don't know how to do it the right way. You haven't let God in. You haven't gotten healing. And so you'll do one of these things, okay? So you're going to see the seekers. And maybe some of these you'll be like, I know somebody that's like this, or that's me. Seekers are people who are always searching for intimacy, but are seldom able to tolerate it. These are the people who feel tremendous fulfillment in the thrill of courtship, but may have difficulty sustaining a relationship of any kind, including marriage. Never sure of how acceptance feels, they're never satisfied with wearing it too long. They may even struggle with believing in God's unchanging love for them because of the lack of permanence of the blessing early in their lives. Has anyone ever known someone that seems to be that sort of person? They're just always searching for intimacy and they can't seem to find it. And it seems like as soon as they get close to getting it, they push those people away. They don't know how to tolerate that fulfillment. And so they're continually pushing people away. Or the shattered. These are the people whose lives are deeply troubled over the loss of their parents' love and acceptance. So they experience things like fear or anxiety or depression or emotional withdrawal, and it can often be traced to missing out on the family blessing. This unhappy road can even lead a person to the terrifying cliffs of suicide. So some of them, it's just they live a shattered life. They live a broken life. They feel like it's not even worth it. It's not worth even living because I don't have anything to live for. Smotherers. This is a common one. Like 2,000-pound sponges, these needy people react to missing their parents' blessing by sucking every bit of life and energy from a spouse, a child, a friend, or an entire congregation. Their past has left them so empty emotionally that they eventually drain those around them of the desire to help or even listen. When this happens, unfortunately, the smotherers understand only that they're being rejected. That's all they understand. I'm trying to do something and I'm just experiencing rejection. So they get hurt once again and they never realize they brought this pain upon themselves. So they end up pushing away the very people they need to help so desperately. Like that's what happens with most of these. So they'll smother. They get rejected, they feel it again, and they keep pushing away the very people that need to help them. Or the angry. As long as people are angry with each other, they're emotionally chained together. Many adults, for instance, remain tightly linked to their parents because they're still furious over missing the blessing. They've never forgiven, they've never forgotten, and as a result, the rattle and chafing of the emotional change distract them from intimacy and other relationships, and the weight of iron links keep them from moving forward in life. They just become angry people, and it's like they're a wrecking ball destroying every relationship they have. Because they've not dealt with it. They've not let God in. They've not let anyone in. And they're going to destroy people because there's so much hurt and pain. And they tried to disassociate from it for a while, but you can only do that for so long. And so they just ruin every relationship because of the anger. Or some people will go the opposite, and they'll detach. Quite a few children who have missed out on the blessing use the old proverb, once burned, twice shy, right? Having lost the blessing from an important person in their lives once, they spend a lifetime protecting themselves from it ever happening again. Keeping a spouse, children, or a close friend at arm's length, they protect themselves, all right, at the price of inviting loneliness to take up residence. Guys, I've actually been a youth pastor. I did a youth pastor ministry for 18 years. I saw so many students who did this. They did. They just detached. They experience hurt. They experience pain. They never are going to go through that again. And the only way that I can ensure that no one will ever hurt me again is if I don't let anyone close enough to hurt me. And so they just keep pushing people. It seems impossible that someone would want to do this, but I've seen it happen. They just continue to push people away because if they don't get too close, they'll never have to experience the pain of what it was like to be close to someone and have it hurt them. And so they just hijack every relationship in their entire lives. And you have to let those people understand the love of God and that how much God loves them, He'll never leave them, and it's a tough process. And then a few more. The driven. In this category, line up extreme perfectionists, workaholics, notoriously picky house cleaners, and generally demanding people who go after getting their blessing the old-fashioned way. I'm going to earn it. That's the only thing I know how to do, is just work harder and work harder and work harder and work harder to earn it, and the thwarted need for affirmation and acceptance keeps these driven people tilting at a windmill named accomplishment and an illusory attempt to gain love and acceptance. If I can just get to this place and accomplish this much, then I'll finally be able to get the blessing from those that I love. So some people are just driven, and you'll see those people. I mean, they're working 90, 100, 110-hour weeks just to get the blessing of somebody, and they never get it. The seduced. Many people who have missed out on their parents' blessing look to fill their relationship needs in all the wrong places. Unmet needs for love and acceptance can tempt a person to sexual immorality, trying to meet legitimate needs in an illegitimate way. Substance abuse and other compulsive behaviors can fall into this category. A drink, a pill, or a behavior is used to cover up the hurt from empty relationships in the past or present, and an addiction can easily result. So these are just 7 or 8 different ways, and some of you guys are like, man, this is like a high-level like therapy session, you know? I didn't know that this is what I was getting, and some of you might be bored by this, but I think it's important for us to understand what's going to happen if we don't give the blessing and we don't get the blessing. And so some of you we need to work through some of these things, acknowledge that that's us, and try to make it right, okay? So this next section is, what do we do if we've missed the blessing? What do you do if you've missed it? So just a couple of steps, and then I'm going to show you a video down the road here a bit to show you an example of this. But here's what we need to do if we've missed the blessing. Number 1, we need to face up to the problem. So you need to all acknowledge sometimes, I am hurt. Like, I'm hurt. And you know what? I'm angry. And I have a right to be angry. And it's a righteous anger, right? Like, I've been hurt. What's happened to me has affected my life in a really negative way, and I'm going to stop pretending that I'm just stronger than all of this, and I'm going to try to not pretend that it didn't happen just so I can, or I'm going to pretend it didn't happen so I can move on. Guys, the first step in actually getting things made right is to actually acknowledge that it's affected your life in a negative way, and I'm hurt, and I'm angry, and I need to feel those emotions. Sometimes you need to feel first, and allow yourself to feel, and to cry, and to yell, and to do whatever you need to do, but quit ignoring the problem because you're afraid or for whatever reason you feel like you can't, right? So face up to the problem. Be honest about how it's affected your life. Number 2, understand the background of the person who hurt you. Like I told you before, there are generational sins and generational patterns. In fact, Exodus 20 says that sometimes the sins of the parents are repeated to the what? 3rd and 4th generations. So some of us, like, we have to go back and look at patterns in our family, and you may find out, wow, there's generations of alcoholics. There's generations of workaholics. There's generations where dad never invested in the family other than bringing home the paycheck. And if I'm going to do it different, I'm going to have to own up to that or realize that and should try to break those generational sins and break those patterns, all right? Where there are just some people who are defined more by what they do than who they are, and I need to get past those sorts of things. Sometimes understanding our parents' background doesn't make everything better, but it does help us to understand that hurt people. And so rather than holding pain in my heart against them forever for things that they didn't do, maybe they didn't even know how to do it. I'm serious. I have people in my office, like husbands who come into my office, and they're like, and they'll tell me, they're like I'll tell them about what a husband should be, and they'll be like, I don't know how. Like, my dad never showed me how to be a husband. He never showed me how to emotionally invest in my wife. Like, I really don't know how, and I believe them. They don't know how to do it. They've never seen it. So we have to understand the backgrounds of those before us. It actually is going to help us figure out what we need to do it different. So face up to the problem, understand your parents' background. This is probably the biggest thing. Forgive. Like, this is so hard to do when you've been hurt in any way or when you've not got the blessing. Forgiveness is the most powerful thing in the world. It is the most powerful thing in the world. It's what Jesus did when he hung on the cross. That's exactly what he was doing. He was forgiving you of every sin you've ever committed. And then we hold on to the hurt and pain that people committed against us, and we say, I can never forgive you of that. And that's not to minimize the hurt and pain, but it's just saying, when you hold on to the bondage or the things that have been done to you, okay, when you hold on to that pain, who's hurting? The person who perpetrated the pain or you? You. You know, some people are still holding the pain from a parent who died 20 years ago, and they still have bitterness and resentment in their heart against that person, and it's causing them to not be able to bless others or receive blessing from anyone. That person's been dead for 20 years. They're not going to acknowledge that they hurt you. They will not acknowledge that. You're not going to get the acknowledgement that you want. So you can either carry that bitterness and resentment and things that have been done to you, or you can just let it go and not just forget about it, but there's this scripture in the Bible that talks about vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Michelle, right? Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Turk. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Like, he'll take care of it. And he'll do it in his own way. And I'm not going to tell you that God's just up there ready to strike somebody dead for what they did to you. But I did tell you, like, years ago when my mother went through her abuse, she went through this process. And she got to the part of forgiveness where she was able to actually forgive the person who had abused her. She actually was able to give it to God and say, I'm bitter, I'm angry, I'm the one in bondage, it's controlling my life, it's affecting my relationship with my kids. I am going to have to forgive as much as I don't want to forgive. And she was able to forgive her perpetrator, give him to the Lord, okay? We had to quit going over there, which that'll be my next step. We had to quit going over there because she couldn't face it anymore. So we quit going into the presence of that person because she couldn't face that person, and that was okay, but she had to give him to the Lord. Now, this doesn't happen every time, but 6 months later, her stepfather passed away of a massive heart attack. 6 months later. And I'm not telling you that God killed him. I am just saying, though, that when we do what we're called to do, things tend to kind of take care of themselves after time. God will deal with it. He will make things right. That's what he does. He's good at that. So sometimes you just need to let that go, give that person to God, and then they're not holding you hostage anymore. I know. And that's what I thought about. Like, what if he would have died before the forgiveness happened? Then it is a lot harder. But she just had some important people in her life tell her, Debbie, you need to forgive. You need to let that go. Because it's affecting everything. All you're doing with your kids, like, you're not able to even bless your kids fully because you're holding on to that kind of thing. And so it was a powerful moment in her life when she was able to forgive. And then the next step, and this is not fun. And I have it with parents, but this can be with anybody, okay? This can be with anybody who hurts you. I'm just doing this in regards to a parent because that's what the blessing's about. So honor your parents. So what does that mean? When you forgive, honor your parents. It means restore the relationship, reconcile, and be in relationship with them again. No, not necessarily. What it might mean is pray for them. That's really what it might mean. Pray for them. I'm going to have to put boundaries. There's a great book. If you guys want to read a great book, it's one of them. I recommend this to everybody who's dealing with people in their lives that are toxic and that it just feels like whenever you're with them, they're hurting you and harming you. So you need to forgive those people, but you don't need to necessarily reconcile. My mother didn't need to reconcile her relationship with her stepfather. She needed to not see him anymore. But she did need to pray to him and recognize that he didn't know the Lord and he was going to go to hell when he died. And so pray for his salvation, pray for his soul. That's how you can honor. Boundaries actually show love and respect to people. Do you know that? So the book, The Boundaries, it's the whole idea that no one can hurt you or harm you without your consent. That's the point of the book. So any of you have a front door to your house? Anybody have one? Why do you have a door? Why do you have a door in your house? What's the point of it? What? Okay, it keeps the weather out. You choose who comes in. Some people, if you know they're coming over, what do? You leave the door open, or you'll tell them, you know what? Why are you ringing the doorbell? Why are you knocking? Like, your family. We love you. You're welcome here, right? You let them in. You let them out. It's not like Donald Trump's wall, okay? We have a door there because we want to let certain people in, and then we also want to tell them, okay, it's time to go home. But what else do you have on your door besides just the doorknob? You have a lock. And some of you have two. There's a reason for that as well. Why do you have a lock on your door? What? Safety, protection. You don't want anybody coming in at any time of day. So that lock is there for protection. That's what a boundary is. You have to put a boundary. You have to lock the door when you know certain people are coming over. Like, you're not welcome here. You're an intruder. You're going to hurt or harm. So we have to choose to honor parents or honor people by showing boundaries, because boundaries actually show love and honor and can help the person who hurt us understand what they've done. Like sometimes people make a change because you put boundaries in place. You ever discipline your child? Why do we discipline them? Because we hate them and we want to hurt them? We discipline them because we love them and we want them to know that their behavior is not acceptable because it's hurting and damaging things. It's damaging their relationship with the Lord. It's damaging their relationship with you. When you put boundaries in place with people who have hurt you, you're telling them, you can't do that to me. You're not going to do that to me. And it's actually the most loving thing that you can do. So face up to the problem, understand the background of who's hurt you, forgive them, honor them, and most of the time that can just be praying for them and giving to the Lord. And number 5, choose to give the blessing to others then. When you've worked through this process and you've found healing and you've honored and you've released those people to God and you're just praying for them, now you're set free from the anger, the bitterness, the burdens, the ungodly behaviors, the past. And now it's like I can be free to just love people and to bless people. And I can be free to let people bless me and love me and honor me. Does that make sense? This is why it's so important to do this. So I'm going to show you a video, about a 3-minute video. I want you to see this because to me, this is one of the best examples that I have ever seen in my life of someone who did this process. They faced up to the problem. They understood the perpetrator, the person who did it, and their story. They forgave the person who did it. They honored that person. And in this video, you'll see how this young man honored. And they choose to give a blessing even when they experience an immense amount of pain. Because some of you guys are like, great talk tonight, Troy, but this is impossible for me to do. You're right. You're right. It's totally impossible for you to do unless God is a part of it. So about a year ago, there was this story that was on the news, and many of you might remember this, but in this story, there was a lady, her name was Amber Geiger. She was a cop. She came home late one night after working a double shift, was very, very tired. Nobody knows the motives or the heart of this woman, but what she ended up doing was going into an apartment building, and she went to the wrong floor. The door this is what she said, she went to the floor of what she thought was her apartment, but she was one floor off, so the room above her floor. The door was ajar. She's a cop. She's got the gun, opens the door. There's a black man in there who is on the couch eating food, and she thinks he's an intruder. This is, again, what was said, and she ends up killing this man in his apartment. Killed him. He lost his life. And so she went through this big, the trial, all the different things. There was a lot that went on. And at the trial, when they were giving the sentencing, this Botham John was the man who was killed. This is his brother Brant. He decided that he was going to speak to this woman who had killed his brother. And I want you to hear what he says.
And I know if you go to God and ask him, he will forgive you. And I don't think anyone could say it. Again, I'm speaking for myself, not even behalf of my family. But I love you just like anyone else. And I'm not gonna say I hope you rot and die just like my brother did, but I personally want the best for you. And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of my family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you. Because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do. And the best would be give your life to Christ. I'm not going to say anything else. I think giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person. and I don't wish anything bad on you. I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please? Please? Yes.
So again, I think if you saw the hug and you saw what was going on, that wasn't fake. A hug doesn't last that long if it wasn't genuinely God had done something in the heart of that person and the heart of the other person and the power of forgiveness. Like that makes, I weep when I see that because that feels impossible. Like when some of us say, you know what, my parents didn't give me the blessing. I grew up in a home where some of these things happen. How am I ever supposed to forgive them? Well, this is just an example of, I think, how you do it, of just giving them, I don't wish anything bad on you. Like, I love you as a person. You hurt me and you harmed me. And you know what? You're going to go to jail for this. And she did for 10 years. And some people would say more, some people would say less. But just the best thing that you could do, I love that part where he says, you know that? What's the best thing you could do? Give your heart to Jesus. Like, if there's anything I wish on you, it's to give your heart to Jesus. And you know what? They did an interview with him. And he said, what did you say to her? And he's like, kind things. And they're like, well, why did you offer that to her? Why did you talk about Jesus? He said, because I don't know if she kills herself in prison. I don't know what's going to happen to her from this day forward. But I just want her to know the Lord, because even if you're the worst person in the world, I don't want them to experience eternity in hell. So anyway, I don't know where you're at with that, but if you've missed the blessing, that's a great example of how you do it, is you basically reverse the curse, right? And so there's a passage in 2 Kings 21, and some of you are familiar with the story, and I'm just going to read a few verses so you can understand what it means to break down generational patterns and generational curses. How do you overcome it when it's been in your family for so long, or this pain has been there for so long? Well, you do it like Josiah did it. So Josiah, this is 3 generations I'm going to share with you, okay? So it's repeated to the 3rd generations the Bible talks about. Well, in the Bible, there's a story of a king named Manasseh. Anybody heard of Manasseh? In 2 Kings 21, the stories of these people are told. So I'm just going to read parts of their story. But Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, imitating the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places that his father Hezekiah. So let's go another generation. He rebuilt the high places, or the idols that Hezekiah had destroyed. And he reestablished the altars for Baal. He made an Asherah. He bowed in worship to all the stars. He served them. He built altars in the Lord's temple, where the Lord said, Jerusalem is where I'll put my name. He built altars to all the stars in the sky in both courtyards. He sacrificed his son in the fire. He practiced witchcraft and divination. He consulted mediums and spiritists, and he did a huge amount of evil in the Lord's sight, angering him. Quite a legacy, right? That's Manasseh's legacy. That's the legacy that he got to pass down to his son, Amon. And so it says Manasseh shed so much innocent blood in verse 16 that he filled Jerusalem with it from one end to another. All right? This was in addition to the sin that he caused Judah to commit, so that they did what was evil in the Lord's sight. So there you go. Good man, right? Some of you have a grandparent like that in your story. Maybe not quite like that, but that's your story. Following that, his son Amon comes into power in verse 19 of chapter 21. Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. In verse 20, he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father Manasseh had done. He repeated the pattern. He walked in all the ways his father had walked. He served the idols his father had served. He bowed and worshiped to them. He abandoned the Lord, the God of his ancestors, and did not walk in the ways of the Lord. So his epitaph was that. That was Amon's story. And his dad Manasseh did the same. So now we're on the second, and we're going to the third generation, all right? Who's the third generation? In chapter 22, a nice young man named Josiah. I got a picture. This might not be exactly what he looked like. This is a nice-looking guy. But Josiah took power when he was 8 years old, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. In verse 2, he did what was right in the Lord's sight, and he walked in all the ways of his father, who? David. Now, you had to go back a bunch of generations to get to where David was. But he reverted back way before. He found his family line and said, David's in my family line, and I'm going to live like David lived. Not like Manasseh, not like Amon. I'm going to reverse the curse. I'm going to break the curse. And you know what he does? Like, if you read chapter 23, I'm just going to read a few verses. He actually not just does what is right, but he completely obliterates everything that's evil there. He doesn't just say, I'm sorry. He actually gives, I'm getting rid of everything. So in verse 4, the king commanded the high priest and the priests of the second rank and the doorkeepers to bring out the Lord's sanctuary, all the articles made for Baal, Asherah, and all the stars in the sky. And he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron and carried their ashes way outside to Bethel. He did away with the priests the kings of Judah had appointed to burn incense at the high places. So he got rid of everyone who was burning in the high places. He got rid of all of them. In verse 6, he brought out the Asherah pole from the Lord's temple outside Jerusalem, and he burned it in the Kidron Valley, beat it to dust, and threw its dust on the graves of the common people. He tore down the houses of the male cult prostitutes that were in the Lord's temple, in which the women were weaving tapestries for Asherah. He brought all the priests from the cities of Judah, and he defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense. He tore down the high places of the city gates at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city. In verse 10, he defiled Topheth so that no one could sacrifice his son or daughter anymore in the fire to Molech. He did away with the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun. In verse 12, he tore down the altars the kings of Judah had made on the roof of Ahaz's upper chamber. He tore down the altars that Manasseh had made in the two courtyards of the Lord's temple, and then he smashed them there and threw their dust into the Kidron Valley. Just a few verses later in verse 21. In addition, he eradicated the mediums, the spiritists, the idols, the images, and all the abhorrent things that were seen in the land of Judah and Jerusalem. And in verse 25, before him there was no king like him who turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his strength according to the law of Moses, and no one like him arose after him. Talk about, we're breaking this, and not just getting rid of a little. This history that's been passed down to me, done with it. I'm starting something totally new. You guys, all of us have an opportunity to do that. Even at this point, break the curses, break the generational the curses that are there. You know, I just love the idea of that's how you reverse the curse. You got to choose to do it different than the way it was done to you. And so that's the whole point of this class called The Blessing. I'm going to close with one more thing. Okay, and then I'll let you go. All right, have any of you heard of Apollo 13? This was a little bit ago, but Apollo 13 was a mission to the moon, and there was 3 men that were on this Apollo 13. And they were supposed to land on the moon, but as they got close to landing on the moon, they started to have some issues with their spacecraft. They realized they weren't going to be able to land on the moon, and they were actually going to have to try to return to Earth. And the point was that they wouldn't just float around in orbit and disappear. Like, this was a very difficult thing to get them from the moon all the way back to the Earth, okay? They were 200,000 miles away from the Earth when the explosion occurred. 200,000 miles from home, all right? Way, way far away. And they recognize we're in trouble, and so we're going to have to start burning a lot of things. So they do all of these burns, And they get the spacecraft. Everything had to be just right. And it was a long process of many, many days. They barely had enough food. They barely had enough water. They were dehydrated. They were close to dying. It's a miracle that they actually lived. But they were actually able to get back to Earth to land in the water in the Pacific Ocean. And all three of these guys survived somehow. But the engineer who was actually working on Apollo 13 and NASA actually made a statement after they were actually rescued. And he actually said that if they would have been 2 degrees off, just 2 degrees, they would have missed the Earth by 11,117 miles. Just 2 degrees wrong on their entry, and they would have missed the Earth by 11,000 miles. 2 degrees. And sometimes some of us are going to deal with people who they may not be 11,000 miles off course, but they might just be 2 degrees off track. And we just need to take little steps sometimes and baby steps to actually overcome some of the bondages and pain that is there. So you don't need to be overwhelmed by all the info that you got over this series, and you don't have to make everything right like now. You're not going to make it, but you might just need to take a couple of baby steps that will make like the 2 degree difference. So I'm going to close with a story. You'll see it in your manual. I'm going to read just an excerpt of this out of the manual. But this is a story of a man named Naaman, and I want you to understand what just a small baby step can do to change the trajectory of your life and your family's life. So Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master, and he was highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and this little girl had served Naaman's wife. So they had gone and intruded, invaded the country, and picked up this girl from Israel. And she says to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who's in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So this girl had been in Israel. She knew about the prophets. She knew about the healing that could happen. So she tells Naaman, "You need to go back, and this prophet's going to be able to cure you." And so Naaman goes to his master, the king of Aram, of a foreign pagan nation, and tells him what the girl from Israel had said. And this pagan king from another nation says, "By all means, go." Naaman was pretty important to him, and he wanted him as a commander because he's pretty good at what he did. So that was part of it, but he lets him go. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. So he sends them to the king of Israel. And this is not in here, but guess what the king of Israel did? He's like, "I don't want to help this person. Like, he's an enemy. Like, he's coming to me from an enemy territory. They're trying to invade us. They're plundering us. They've taken our girls away. Like, I'm not going to help this man who's the commander-in-chief of a foreign army." Okay, but then there's Elisha the prophet, and he actually sends a messenger to the king and says to him, "Go wash your," or Elijah sent a messenger to say to him. So the prophet comes in. The king's like, "Don't do this." Elijah actually steps in, the prophet, and sends a messenger and says, "Wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry, so he's mad, right? He's mad. Why? He didn't get the information that he wanted, okay? I don't want to go wash in the Jordan 7 times. What I hoped you would do is place your hand over me and say you're healed. That would be a lot easier. But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me, stand, call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of his leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than what all the waters are of Israel? Couldn't I wash them and be cleansed?" So he's basically saying, back where I live, there's these really clean rivers. And actually, I'd rather go to that river. If I'm going to get healed, I'm not going to go to this dirty river here in Israel. Like, this isn't going to heal anyone. This is polluted. This is nasty water. Send me back to those, right? He's all upset because he wasn't going to get healed the way that he wanted to get healed. So he turns and goes off in a rage. And Naaman's servants go to him and say, "My father," like, I'm just going to be I want you to hear this. "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? how much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? He's like talking sense into him. The man just told you what you needed to do. You don't want to take the step to do it. I would suggest you take that small step and see what happens. So he goes down, he listens to the guy. He goes down, dips himself in the Jordan 7 times as the man of God told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of the young boy. Sometimes little things and little steps can make a huge difference. And all you need to do is a small thing. Take that next small step, which might be a big step. I think I talked about that in a sermon a few weeks ago, right? When Peter stepped out onto the water and he was afraid, but you know what? He knew his God, and he knew his God could do miracles. So he's like, I can stay in here in the boat and I can go under the water and die, or I can go out there to my Savior on the water and live. So he takes, and I bet it was the smallest step he ever took. I'm seriously thinking it might be, right? He probably wasn't jumping out of the boat and running to Jesus, because Jesus is like, come to me. And he's probably like, everyone I've ever seen do this before, they went under. So he takes a little step, and then he realizes, I'm walking on water. And then he started taking more steps, and then he probably freaked out, like most of us would, starts going under, and Jesus grabs him and says, hey, well, he's like, you have little faith, which I'm like, come on, Jesus. Like, how many of you would have stepped outside the boat? So I'm like, give him a little, grace, and he does. But he took that small step. And so I just want to encourage you guys, the blessing might seem like such a small thing, and all the small elements of the blessing have the ability to bring people who are miles apart back together. I believe that. Your family, your mom, your dad, your friend, your employer, whoever that might be, just living out the blessing in your life and doing the small things can change everything, guys. I just want to encourage you with that. Live out the culture of the blessing 2 degrees at a time. Just 2 degrees at a time. C.S. Lewis said, it's the little things that turn us into a heavenly or a hellish creature. Kind of an interesting quote. Sometimes it's just the little things that we have to address or do. Or whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with much. And whoever's dishonest with very little will be dishonest with much. Some things for you to consider. Some questions for you to consider as we go. Who needs your blessing most urgently right now? Like if you look in your entire life, you go, because a lot of you guys are like, mom's not around, dad's not around, spouse is not around. Some of us may not have any of those people around, but there are people in our life who need the blessing. All of us have people in our life. So I would just ask you, who in your life needs the blessing most earnestly right now, most urgently? Who can you give meaningful touch to? A spoken word that attaches high value and shows that you have a hope and a future, and you have an active, genuine commitment to them. Who in your life needs the blessing most urgently? I would challenge you to write the name of that person down, wife, kids, prodigal, friend, whoever that is. Spend some time writing some notes of encouragement. Be a voice in their life of encouragement. We can all do this, right? We all can do this. And the final thing that I'll leave you with, what small thing, what small step do you need to do or take to help someone experience the blessing? You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to make everything right. It's just, I just need to take a small step, the next small step that could turn into the biggest step that you ever take in your entire life. So that's the blessing, and I would love it. There's 20 or 30 of you who have been a part of a class like this. I mean, now you are ambassadors of the blessing. Okay, we've got 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 people in the church who may not know about this, and we've got a lot of people out in the world who don't know about this, but it starts with us. It starts with us in our small little areas, making the blessing known. Tell people about the blessing, encourage people with the blessing, tell them to go online and watch some of the classes if it could be helpful to them. They can find that on the website. They can find it on the church app, on the Central, Institute page. They can find these sessions. Let people know about it, just more than anything, because it can change the trajectory of a person's life, and that's a pretty big deal, okay? So thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of the class. I hope it's been helpful to you. And I would just like to say a prayer over all of you as you go and kind of just, again, send you out to be ambassadors of the blessing to the people in your life who need the blessing urgently. So let's pray. Our God and Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for this class. I thank you for those who kind of put this information out there that we can take this simple blessing and we can use it in our lives with the people that matter the most to us. And Lord, I know that all of us in here have people in our lives who have hurt us, who have said things that have hurt us, that have done things that have hurt us. And we're finding it very, very difficult to take the first step to show love to them. But I pray, God, that you would allow all of us in here to be ambassadors of the blessing to people who need to know. And Lord, that by doing these small little things like writing a note of blessing, as was shared earlier in this session, of speaking life over our kids, and maybe every night before our kids go to bed, a blessing over them. Lord, thank you for the reminder that even a 3-year-old can understand the power of blessing and can say, do it again. Do it again, Mom. Do it again, Dad. May you use us as beacons of hope to those who need to hear. And for those of us who are in here that are maybe like this picture that was drawn earlier, that they've been living and dealing with their own pain and struggle for so long, and they've kind of created this nice little world where it feels safe, but no one's in it except them. Lord, allow them to drop the facade and to let you in first and foremost, to allow you to carry their burdens, to allow you to carry their past, to allow you to forgive them of the ungodly behaviors and the things that are holding them back, so that, God, they can then give the blessing and receive the blessing. May we all drop those facades and get beneath the surface to deal with those issues. God, I thank you that you want the best for us, that you have plans for us and plans to prosper us and to give us hope in a future. Give us the courage to believe that and the courage to live that out each and every day. Lord, I do pray a blessing on each person here. Lord, I pray that you would watch over them and protect them as you go, as they go. And Lord, as it says in Numbers 6, when the priest would give a blessing, the Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons sons, may the Lord bless you. May he protect you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may he be gracious to you, and may the Lord look with favor on you and give you his peace." In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.